Good afternoon. We'll be getting started in just a minute. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the third webinar in our fall webinar series. Today's event focuses on leadership coaching and the elements essential to a successful program. Before we get started, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping things. First, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website after the event. You can find our past webinars and this one at revivingschools.org, and we'll show you that website later in our presentation. This webinar will include a Q&A session at the end of this webinar. Since everyone is muted, we will collect questions through the chat feature, and also we'll have the ability during Q&A to raise your hand and ask a question. I will unmute you at that time once I see that you've raised your hand, and then you can ask your question when prompted. I thank you all again for joining us, and I will now turn it over to Donna Worthen to get us started.
Thank you, Jill. And I also want to thank everyone for joining the webinar today. As Jill stated, I'm Donna Worthen, Senior Turnaround Consultant with American Institutes for Research. I've been with AIR for 3 years and in public education for over 25 years. During those years, I served as a classroom teacher, instructional specialist, and principal at the elementary and secondary levels. As a member of the district and school improvement team at AIR, I work with schools receiving SIG funds by providing leadership coaching and ELA content support. In addition, I work with schools and districts by providing professional development support to improve their practices of observing teachers, accurately assessing observation data, and providing quality feedback to teachers. At this time, I'd like to introduce our 2 panel members for today's webinar and allow them the opportunity to tell a little about themselves. With us today are Drs. Ursula Hill and Aaron Butler. Dr. Hill, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I do have more than 25 years of experience in public education. I've been a principal and assistant principal. I've also been a special education teacher. My time with American Institute for Research. During that time, I've served as the Senior Turnaround Consultant. I've also served as an on-site coordinator for several of our schools receiving SIG funds. I'm also serving currently as a leadership coach with some of our New York schools. I also aid schools in analyzing their school improvement data as well as aligning their teaching practices to deliver improved, to deliver instructional rounds, conducting tiered leadership coaching, and working with the school, with school and family connections. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hill. Thank you, Dr. Hill. Dr. Butler, could you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you, Donna. I'm Aaron Butler. I'm a senior turnaround consultant, and I'm currently in my 5th year with AIR. Prior to coming to AIR, I was a math teacher, science teacher, director of professional development, and high school administrator. And currently, I serve as a leadership coach for some middle and high school principals, a trainer for professional learning communities, a project director for 2 schools that are currently receiving and implementing their school improvement grants.
Thank you, Dr. Butler. As we move forward, I'd like to talk a little bit about AIR's mission of applying rigorous research to creating innovative solutions to the most critical challenges in education, healthcare, and workforce productivity within and beyond the United States. Founded in 1946, AIR is one of the largest not-for-profit research and technical assistance organizations in the world. With 1,500 global employees, AIR has a strong foundation in education research and the application of those findings to policy and practices. Before we continue with today's webinar, I would like to take a moment to find out a little more about those joining us today and the leadership coaching programs you currently engage in. We will do this through 2 polling questions. Our first one is posted now, and I'd like for each of you to take a moment to respond. As we look at the results of those on the call today, it seems like more than half of us have internal, seasoned administrators serving as mentors for their building leaders, and almost 30% of us have external coaches that work with our building leaders, and a small percentage of us don't have current leadership programs in place. We're going to move now to our second question, and if I could ask you to again take a moment to respond to this question. Well, it looks like we have a tie between 2 of them. 29%, almost 30% are considering an external partner for coaching. And similarly, there may be some that are still researching the option of leadership coaching for their school level administrators. And also the bottom one, forgive me, that there are no plans right now to hire leadership coaches for their building administrators. Thank you all for participating in that. During today's webinar, we're going to discuss the importance of competencies in the development of turnaround leaders. We're going to talk about a coaching approach based on turnaround competencies. We'll also hear from our 2 panel members about their work with school leaders. And then we're going to wrap up our time together with a question and answer session. Research tells us that school leadership is second only to classroom instruction in impact on student learning. Also, it is the #1 influencer in a teacher's instructional decisions, as well as their decisions to join or leave a particular school. No matter where you are or whether your coaching support currently is in place, we do want to share with you today how you can build a competency-based coaching model to use within your district and in your schools. Leadership coaching is delivered through aligned activities. These can include needs assessments, shoulder-to-shoulder coaching, blended coaching, leadership academy, and instructional rounds. I often associate these activities with those of professional football players and their coaches. I'm a true football fan and love to watch the games and my coaches and players. And I often think when it comes to that needs assessment, how coaches, when they work with players in particular positions, they do quick needs assessments to see if they are able to perform at that level and what support they need to help them get better at their work. That shoulder-to-shoulder coaching often reminds me of during a game when you see a quarterback perhaps not do such a great job on the field and doesn't make the third down. You often see them running over to the side of the field and huddle up with their coaches, whether it's the head coach or the quarterback coach, to talk about what went well, what went wrong, and then how can you make those changes to ensure that there's success as you go back onto the field. So again, these leadership activities are necessary to improve the competencies of our leaders so that they can better service the schools in which they work in. School turnaround competencies based on recent research has broken it down into 4 clusters, and within those 4 clusters are 10 competencies. Driving for results is the first competency, and without driving for results, a leader is unlikely to get the large jumps in scores that are often needed. These capabilities are key in changing what has not been working for a school. In the influencing results cluster, this is all about identifying and utilizing the staff to enact the change. These capabilities allow the leader to understand the wants, needs, and underlying motives. Influencing results is about getting things done without always being directive. The problem-solving cluster is necessary for recognizing the organizational changes that need to be made, as well as the ability to find alternative approaches. And finally, leaders must both appear and feel strong and committed to their work. Their personal beliefs have an impact directly on the early work of turnaround phases. It's critical to know that according to research, the primary critical competencies are achievement and impact and influence. Secondary critical competencies are monitoring and directiveness, team leadership, and self-competency. It's important to consider competencies when you're developing a leadership coaching model and to understand the research that supports this. A competency is a pattern of thinking, acting, or speaking that causes a person to be successful in their job or their role. In addition, one who regularly, without prompting, displays those competencies more often at higher levels and at the right time will make themselves and their organization successful. And you'll note on the following slide, research from Steiner and Hassel from 2011, truly making the point about leaders having the greatest impact on students and really having those underlying competencies readily available to make the change happen in their organizations. The leadership coach works behind the scenes as a guide on the side, making sure structures and action steps are established to support the work of individual principals, administrative and/or school leadership teams. Other times, the leadership coach works in front of the cameras as a facilitator for leadership academies, instructional rounds, and virtual coaching sessions. The work of the leadership coach supports the development of skills and knowledge of principals and school leadership team members for transforming schools in the context of turnaround competencies. A coaching cycle is based on a theory of change, one that focuses on strong support for the leader, which then leads to improved instruction and relationships with students, which then, in turn, positively influences learning and achievement for students. Really, in looking at this cycle, it's the work of the coach and the leader together in identifying goals based on competencies and developing a plan of action that they can implement and collect data on with their leadership team and teachers at the school, make changes if necessary, and then develop next steps as appropriate. Although the needs of each coaching visit is specific to the principal and school, the recommended essential element areas during a coaching interaction should follow the components of a cycle of continuous improvement, and it should include planning and communication, implementation and monitoring, course correction, and professional learning. An example of planning and communication could be that if during a visit the coach and the principal are focused on a shared purpose and goals, and then spend time examining the mission and goals for the school or the specific program, including what is written and how it has been communicated with staff. As we move into the implementation and monitoring, an example for this, if the visit is focused on organizational systems, the leader and coach can review student discipline data to check for consistency in disciplinary consequences across administrators, along with identifying areas for improvement. In the area of course correction, for example, if the visit is focused on effective teaching and learning environment, the leader and coach may create a set of action steps to ensure teachers are analyzing common assessment data in their professional learning communities. And finally, the professional learning, this should be focused on helping the leader reach his or her personal and professional growth goals. Individual coaching is important for a number of reasons. It meets individuals where they are, and again, I'll go back to my example of pro athletes and the work that they do with their coaches, as well as helping them navigate through the hard and unique work of turnaround. By coaching the leadership team and meeting with them monthly, we can help monitor and adjust throughout the year, as well as help them customize and adapt for their campus. This helps to accelerate and ensure that they can see measurable results. Of course, waiting until the quarterly academies does not work, because this oftentimes leaves too much time past. Another thought in developing your coaching model is really customizing your leadership coaching around the competency goals and adding true value to the development of your administrators. Also, one thing that often people overlook is planning and celebrating for quick wins. This is when the leader in a school can couple signaling change with quick wins, and they may be able to dispel the entrenched mindset that the school will never change. And a few examples of quick wins could include Easy things as the improvement to the physical appearance of the school by perhaps planting flowers by the school sign, placing staff in the hallways during transitions to establish order, adjusting the schedule to allow for teachers to team plan, and meeting short-term goals for student achievements. And this could be done through weekly assessments or even unit assessments. As I mentioned earlier, today we have Drs. Ursula Hill and Aaron Butler to share coaching experiences in the field that illustrate how utilizing the leadership competencies help to develop leadership goals with principals and leadership teams with whom they currently work. Dr. Hill, we'll begin with you today.
Thank you. Hello to everyone once again. The leadership challenge or opportunity that confronted the principal that I was working with dealt more with monitoring the implementation of key school improvement grant initiatives, as well as the related professional development and the teachers' implementation of the new strategies that they had gleaned from that professional development. Also, equally important, the teachers indicated that they really did not have a lot of knowledge or understanding about the school improvement process or what the school itself was doing to improve, and that was indicated in the school DTSCE, and that's the state review. So after the principal completed the self-reflection tool, she noted that an area that she really wanted to focus on was monitoring and directing, and she set goals in that area, and one of the goals specifically dealt with monitoring 3 of those key initiatives, as well as assessing the teachers' use of the information that they had learned from the corresponding professional development. Now, some of the key activities or the key steps that were taken to help the teacher realize the goal included the following. The principal, actually, she convened a meeting with her assistant principals and made sure she shared her intent and her expected outcomes. They also developed look-forwards based on the information that the administrators have received from the professional development. And actually, during that meeting, the assistant principals revealed their challenges to the principal that they had with keeping up with the teachers that they were not actually able to observe because of unforeseen interruptions or disruptions or, behavior issues or parent meetings or things of that nature, things that just pull them away from their scheduled activities for that day. So, and then they realized with that happening, they really could not or they did not keep a record of who they didn't see or who they forgot to go and see. So that became a challenge for them. So during that time, we actually pulled out our calendar and charted the teachers' names, wrote their names on the calendar, and then that helped them to actually keep a record of who they had seen and who they had not seen. And the teachers that they did not get an opportunity to see, they had a good record of it. And then when they came back and met for their weekly meeting, they could actually sit down and say, I didn't get a chance to go see teacher A and B. So they could put that teacher back on their list. But also during their weekly meetings, they were able to sit down and discuss their findings, the strengths and the weaknesses, and also other areas where they may have realize that they need more professional development. And then when that information was reported back to the staff, they used the Gantt chart, which served as a visual representation to the teachers where they could actually take that chart away, and the chart was also enlarged and kept in their, some call it war room, or their leadership room where all that data was. So they made sure that everyone was aware of what they were doing and how they were doing it. And when the principal and the assistant principal, when they reported back to the staff, they reported in general terms. For example, 6 out of the 10 teachers were actually implementing guided reading groups as recommended from the professional development. That way they didn't single out any individual teachers. When they had their grade level meetings or their grade level PLCs, they were able to drill down more and say, okay, in third grade, we're noticing that you're having problems actually with the planning component. So no one was really, I don't want to say ostracized, but put on notice, or as the children say, called out in front of their colleagues, but they did it in small groups. And then when they even had individual meetings with teachers, they were able to express those concerns. At the end of the day, once they had all of this, once they had this process down, the teachers actually responded and said that they appreciated the specific feedback that the administrators were providing. No more were they providing general information, and no one felt, that it, applied to them. So they really appreciated that. And also the teachers were able to have a visual representation and a very good understanding of what the school was actually doing to improve the academics in the school, and they actually saw the pace that the school was going when they looked at their Gantt chart and the status of each of the initiatives that they were implementing, and that helped the school out. So the final result ended in a more coherent monitoring process for the administrators as well as for the instructional staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Dr. Butler, can you share how you utilize the leadership competencies in your work with your principal?
Yes, would be honored to do that. I want to share an example of a district that we worked with in Missouri, and the challenge or the opportunity that we saw in working with this middle school was that it was a middle school that was going through the school improvement grant through the turnaround process, and we've been working very closely with for a year or a little over a year, and we noticed that this school was operating as kind of an island in the district, and they were really benefiting the principal, the assistant principals, the leadership team were really benefiting from looking at setting goals in the turnaround competencies and receiving leadership coaching services. And we saw this as a real opportunity to expand what this school was learning and spread it throughout the district. So we met closely with the district. We devised a plan for what was a year-long leadership academy. And this was designed specifically for schools and principals and their school leadership teams that were currently in or getting ready to go into a turnaround or transformation type program. And throughout the course of the year, as Donna stated earlier, the first thing we started with was the leadership competencies, identifying what areas of strength the members of the school leadership team had, not just the principal, and setting goals for improvement throughout the year. And we were able to track that progress, talk about those throughout the year at the different sessions. We also felt it was really important to customize what the teams were getting in these trainings. It wasn't a one-size-fits-all of coming in, and every school had a little bit different need. Some of them had similar needs, and we wanted to make sure that we dealt with that. So we worked with them on, as Donna talked about earlier, quick wins, setting those, celebrating those. Looking at how to implement and monitor progress on their school improvement plans, working through a fixed and growth mindset amongst the teams, also looking at observations and feedback that they were providing teachers and that they were also providing in their leadership team meetings. This cohort came together every month and really focused on sharing those best practices, learning from each other. And over the course of the year, they really came together as a larger group within the district. And the result was really an excellent model, and it was a lot of fun for our staff who were helping facilitate the sessions, and also all of the attendees. It was just provide a really relevant professional learning model that was sustainable, and they could build off of each other. And really just help reinforce the fact that focused leadership coaching, focused on competencies, focused on improvement, will lead to more effective principals and leadership teams, and can really serve as a great model moving forward.
Thank you, Dr. Butler, for your insight and your practitioner's hat in sharing real life what these competencies can do in the work with principals. As we mentioned at the beginning, research does show that working within these 4 competencies truly do have an impact on the development and effectiveness of a school leader, as well as an impact on the school itself, including school staff and students. No matter what process you are currently in, whether you have seasoned administrators serving as mentors for your building level principals, or if you have external partners that you're using, or even just in the mode of looking for what are some things that you need to consider in developing a coaching model within your district. I would hope that you would take away from today's discussion the importance of those competencies, as well as how these competencies truly can impact those that work in there, and the support that a leadership coach can give to a principal and their work. Jill, I think I'll turn it over to you now, and perhaps open it up to any questions that anyone might have that's on the call with us today that myself or Dr. Hill or Dr. Butler might be able to address for you.
Thank you, Donna. Yeah, just a reminder, you can provide your question in the chat feature, or you can raise your hand and I will unmute you and prompt you for your question. So we'll open it up now for questions. Are there no questions out there today based upon the content that you heard from Donna and Aaron and Ursula? Anything that they could help you with think through about your leadership coaching program? Ms. Elder, do you have a question? I've unmuted you.
I was asking if you showed the slide again.
Which slide would you like me to show you?
The competency slide, with the 4 competencies.
Sure.
Thank you. Really good information too. I so appreciate it. Awesome.
Do you have any questions you'd like to ask about these?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I was just taking notes on it, so I just wanted to see it again.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
No problem. Mr. Doty, do you have a question? Mr. Doty, I show you have a question. Do you have a question you'd like to ask?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Yeah, I was just wondering what, especially for the two coach presenters, what, well, for any of you for that matter, what do you think is the right frequency of coaching, particularly in turnaround or transformation schools? And I'm asking that as one, we have a firm that provides turnaround coaching to schools, and so I'm asking more as an external provider than as a school person, but you know, how do you determine the right frequency, both in terms of meeting with principals, meeting with the principal's expanded leadership team, et cetera?
Dr. Butler, would you like to respond to that?
Sure, I can kick it off and see. You know, when trying to organize these with schools, it's really you know, I talked about a one size fits all, and so it's kind of hard to say that this is you know, definitely the way to go. But in working with these academies that I talked about, you know, one thing we found through the course of the year was that one time a month, and these were full day academies, that, you know, it seemed to be a little too much in some ways, and so we tried to cut down the intensity of the day, if you will, and give them more time to work as teams. So I guess my recommendation would be, I think 2 or 3 times a month in smaller doses would probably be better received and more effective than trying to lump everything into one day. I think you can go too far. You know, it doesn't necessarily need to be an everyday thing or even an every week thing, but you know, I think, you know, and then that 2 to 3 times a month face to face, and maybe some you know, Skyping, FaceTime, phone calls, or some other type of interaction, so that you stay on top of each other, and sharing emails. I think that could be really effective. So trying to find that balance in there. Does that answer your question, or does that help?
Yeah, that's great. I think, you know, as you mentioned, it obviously every school is unique and kind of has its own situation, but you know, we struggle with kind of trying to figure out what is the right touch, right, so that you can build skills and these competencies, and you know, and provide the right just the right level of support. So yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
And one more thing, because actually when you were saying that, it made me think of something else in that right touch. You know, one thing I've also found to be really helpful is specifically aligned to these goals of the competencies of having a principal or you know, whoever I'm working with send me a weekly update. I ask them to do it either you know, Friday afternoon or over the weekend before they start every week. So just send me an email so we can stay in touch. Tell me how you're going to work to what things you're going to do to work on your goal this week. Which it's kind of a light touch, but it's a way to, you know, if I'm not on site with them that week, it's a way to stay just to stay in contact. So you know, that's just one more thing that popped into my head.
Great.
Yes,
Thanks.
Erin, this is Ursula, and I agree with you. I know working with my principals, I do, when I'm not on site, we do have telephone conversations, and it helps to build a relationship. So once I am on site, I have a great idea, a really good idea of what's going to be happening. so I don't go on site blindly. So once we have an opportunity to have a conversation on the telephone, and sometimes we're texting, but mainly on the telephone we're talking or using FaceTime, and she or he, they're sharing with me, you know, what their plans are. Sometimes we talk some things through, and then once I get on site and get an opportunity to see exactly what they're talking about, before I leave, I try to give a little I do, you do type of thing, and let's see how this works. And I try not to leave a lot for them to do because I want to really make sure that they have a good understanding of it while they're building their competencies, and then we talk about it. And then once they get it fully developed, for the next time I'm on site, or the next 2 times I'm on site, I'll get an opportunity to see them actually execute the skill or strategy that they're trying to improve.
Good.
Are there any additional questions? If there aren't any more, I'd like to thank you all for joining us. And I hope that you were able to gather some information and some things that you can take back to your school. Please watch. We'll be putting a recording for this webinar up on our school at revivingschools.org. And please watch your email for registration for our next webinar later this month on an approach to improve school climate and integrate social and emotional learning. So thank you very much for joining us, and have a great rest of the day.